You're in a supermarket. Your toddler wants the chocolate sitting near the checkout. You say no. They ask again. You say no again. And then the crying begins. At first, it's whining, then louder, then screaming. Your child drops to the floor. People turn around. Someone is watching. And suddenly, you don't care about the chocolate anymore. You just want the noise to stop. So you bend down and whisper, "Okay, fine, you can have it." The crying stops, almost immediately. You feel relieved. But something else just happened. Your child may have learned a simple connection. Big meltdown, followed by getting what I wanted. And when that connection gets repeated, the next meltdown can become easier to trigger. This is the psychological trap of using rewards to end a public tantrum. And the frustrating part? It works. That's exactly why parents keep doing it. Most parents aren't thinking, "Today I'm going to teach my child that tantrums work." You're thinking, "I just need this to stop." Maybe you're tired. Maybe your child is already having a difficult day. Maybe you're carrying groceries while everyone around you is staring. And suddenly, you feel judged. So, you negotiate. "Stop crying and I'll get you something. Be good and I'll buy the chocolate. Calm down and we'll get the toy." Sometimes the reward is a toy. Sometimes it's a snack. Sometimes it's your phone. Anything that makes the crying stop. And when it works, you remember it. Because your brain learns from relief too. I gave them something, and the screaming stopped. Your child is learning at the same time. And that's where the cycle can begin. It's important not to misunderstand what's happening. Your toddler usually isn't standing there thinking, "Excellent, I've successfully manipulated my parent." That's an adult interpretation of a very young brain. Toddlers are still developing impulse control. They have enormous feelings, but limited ability to manage them. They're focused much more on the present moment. I want it, I can't have it, I'm upset. And when something suddenly changes that feeling, their brain pays attention. Imagine the sequence. Your child asks for a toy. You say no. They cry. You continue saying no. Eventually, you give them the toy. The child doesn't need to understand psychology. Their brain simply notices what happened. I cried, and eventually I got the toy. If that pattern happens repeatedly, it becomes a lesson.
Here's what makes this confusing. The strategy works. You give your child the chocolate, and they stop crying. You hand over the phone, and they're suddenly quiet. You promise the toy, and they get back on their feet. So you think, "See? It worked." But short-term success doesn't always mean long-term success. Your child may not be learning disappointment is okay. They may instead be learning, if I push hard enough, something might change. And the next time they hear no, they may try the same strategy. Sometimes the crying starts faster. Sometimes the screaming becomes louder. And sometimes they refuse to move. Not necessarily because they're becoming more difficult, but because the old strategy has worked before. You give in 10 times. Then, on the 11th time, you decide not to. Your child becomes even more upset. You wonder, why is this tantrum suddenly so much worse? Because from their perspective, the old pattern worked before. They're discovering whether it still works now.
Now, this doesn't mean rewards are always harmful. Positive reinforcement can be useful. If your child puts their toys away and you praise their effort, that's different. If your child tries something difficult and you celebrate their persistence, that's different too. The issue isn't simply reward equals bad. The important question is, what behavior is the reward connected to? There's a huge difference between "Thank you for helping me clean up" and "Stop screaming and I'll give you what you want." The first connects cooperation with a positive outcome. The second can accidentally connect emotional escalation with getting what they want. That's the distinction parents need to understand.
Knowing what not to do isn't enough. You need something you can actually use while your toddler is screaming in the middle of a store. First, talk less. When a toddler is overwhelmed, long explanations usually don't help. You don't need a 5-minute lecture. You can simply say, "I know you really want it." Pause. "I'm not buying it today." That's enough. You're acknowledging the feeling without changing the boundary. Second, don't turn the tantrum into a negotiation. If you've already said no, you don't need to explain it 20 different ways. You can calmly repeat, "I know you're upset. We're still not getting it." And then stop arguing. Your child doesn't have to agree with the boundary. They need to experience that the boundary remains predictable. Third, help them through the feeling instead of trying to erase it. You're not trying to make your child happy immediately. You're teaching them that being unhappy is survivable. They can be angry. They can cry. They can be disappointed. And you can still stay beside them. This may be the hardest part. Sometimes the biggest pressure isn't your child. It's the adults around you. You can tolerate your toddler screaming. What you struggle with is feeling judged. But remember, a public tantrum isn't a parenting performance. You don't have to prove to strangers that your child is perfectly behaved. Your job isn't to make everyone around you comfortable. Your job is to help your child learn. That might mean leaving the store. It might mean taking them somewhere quieter. It might even mean abandoning the shopping trip. And yes, that's frustrating. But leaving a supermarket is temporary. Teaching your child that screaming is the fastest route to getting something can become a much longer problem. Don't panic. If you've given your child chocolate during a tantrum, you haven't ruined them. If you've handed over your phone because you couldn't take another minute of screaming, you're not a terrible parent. You are probably overwhelmed. Parenting isn't about getting every moment right. It's about noticing patterns and changing them when you understand them. The next time your child melts down because they want something, you don't need to become a completely different parent. Just change one part of the sequence. Instead of, "Stop crying and I'll give it to you," try, "I know you really want it." Then hold the boundary. Your child may cry longer at first. They may even get louder. And this is where many parents give up. They think, "This isn't working." But success isn't always measured by how quickly the crying stops. You're teaching something much deeper. I can be disappointed without getting everything I want. Because that's the real lesson. Your child will hear no many times in life. A friend will say no. A teacher will say no. They'll lose games. They'll miss opportunities. They won't always get invited. They won't always get the toy. They won't always get their way. And one of the most valuable things you can teach them isn't how to avoid disappointment. It's how to survive it. Your toddler doesn't need a childhood without frustration. They need to discover that frustration is safe enough to experience, that they can cry and you're still there, that they can be angry and the boundary can remain, that they can be disappointed without someone immediately making the disappointment disappear. Because emotional strength isn't built when everything goes your child's way. It's built in those small moments when things don't, and they slowly discover, "I can handle this." So the next time you're standing in a supermarket and your toddler is crying because you said no, you may feel the urge to reach for the quickest solution: a chocolate, a toy, a phone, anything that makes the noise stop. And sometimes you may still choose it. You're human. But before you do, remember what your child may be learning from that moment. Every tantrum isn't just a difficult moment to survive.
it's also a learning moment. Your child is discovering what happens when they hear no, what happens when they become angry, and what happens when their feelings become too big. You can teach them that screaming makes the world give in, or you can slowly teach them something far more valuable. You can be upset, and I will still be here. You can be disappointed, and the answer can still be no. You don't have to get everything you want to feel safe. Because someday, the tantrums will become smaller, the supermarket will be quieter, and your child will face disappointment without needing someone to immediately make it disappear. And that is a skill worth teaching.